Do you have gaps in the walls of your dungeon build? Good luck trying to find a piece that'll fit it. You need some mossy pillars. First, start by cutting a 1/2-inch piece of XPS foam. Then carefully skin off the surface. Use your project knife to bevel the edges. Use a ballpoint pen to draw in some wood grain texture. Take some of the leftover styrene that have been primed gray from your dungeon build. Cut out a couple of strips of the styrene. Then, using hot glue, I wrap the strips of styrene around the pillars to create the metal bands. I then hot glue the pillar to the piece of the wall. The idea is to create a wall that is 2 inches wide so that you can fill the gap. I then use small gems to create rivets on the metal bands. I then put in 2 screws so that the wall can be magnetized to the board. After I put a base coat on the whole piece, I paint the wall part the same as I did all the walls that you've seen previously in the videos on the dungeon. When painting the pillars, I want them to look like wet dungeon wood, so I reference pictures of pier pillars that had been in water. This was achieved by fading brown to gray to green at the bottom of the pillar. I then put a grungeon wash over all of the wall. Once that had dried, I did some highlighting over the wall and the pillar. Next, I painted the metal bands a metallic color. After that dried, I speckled on a rust color. I then put a reddish brown wash over all of the metal. I did a few highlights with some bright silver over the edges to make it look like the metal had been weathered. Then, using various greens and brown washes, I weathered down the wall and the pillar. I concentrated most of the green washes towards the bottom of the pillar to sell that idea that it had been sitting in water. Now it's time to add some moss to that mossy pillar. I concentrate mainly in the space between the pillar and the wall itself, as that's where probably moss would have accumulated the most. Once that dried, I stained it using some of the green shades. After dry brushing some final green highlights onto the moss, you now have a completed mossy pillar wall that you can add to fill in the gaps of the dungeon.